following is a TV commercial for American Family Insurance.
Since the dawn of time, people have needed people. The personal connection, the shoulder to lean on. That is our role. To deliver more than just a policy on a piece of paper. To deliver peace of mind. Because we are family. American family. And like family, we grow stronger each day with the constant promise to always be fair, helpful, and caring. Doing whatever we can to make things easier. Striving to keep our promises. This is what we do for our clients. We get to know them like family. Because that's who we are. American Family Insurance.
But today, the Insider Exclusive presents a true, really tragic story, one that American Family Insurance doesn't want you to know. One hot Missouri summer day, Galen Richey's sister, Brenda, called her insurance company, American Family, and her agent, Catherine Phillip Leitz, telling her that a 1,400-pound tree limb, nearly half the tree, had fallen on Brenda's house. She called 3 times that week, and on 3 separate occasions, American Family refused to pay to have this 1,400-pound limb removed under the terms and conditions of her homeowner's policy. Reason given by her agent? That unless the tree fell during a storm, she had no coverage. The tree limb remained on Brenda's rooftop for at least 10 days. Brenda, being a single mom, wasn't able to afford to pay a tree removal service from her own pocket to remove this tree. Unable to get any help whatsoever from American Family and her agent, Brenda called her big brother, Galen, as a last resort. In the process of removing the huge tree, the limb broke and knocked Galen off the roof to the ground 15 feet below, landing on his tailbone. He suffered a severe spinal cord injury that left him paralyzed from the waist down. Today, the Insider Exclusive presents how Galen Richey's lawyers, Brian McAllister, Steve Garner, and Christopher Lawler, took on American Family Insurance and got justice for Galen Richey with a record verdict of $13 million upheld by the Missouri Court of Appeals, and how they taught American Family Insurance the real meaning of real shoulders to lean on, delivering much more than a policy and peace of mind, being truly helpful and caring, and especially keeping their promises. Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive, live from the McAllister Law Firm in Kansas City, Missouri. It is my great pleasure to introduce Brian McAllister of the McAllister Law Firm. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve.
The case that you handled for Galen Richey, where you sued American Family Insurance, is a kind of a case, a lot of cases that you handle, isn't it? Personal injury, negligence cases, that sort of thing. Tell us a little bit about the type of cases that your law firm generally handles.
Well, when people ask me what I do, what kind of law I practice, I say I represent human beings. Mm-hmm. We do not represent corporations. We represent people like you and like me. And we concentrate our efforts, and we've really dedicated ourselves to representing people who are seriously injured or who have been killed in cases involving driver negligence, trucking cases, product liability, and also civil rights cases when someone has been wronged by government.
And this is often cases where a lot of these people really couldn't afford a lawyer, right?
In most cases involving this type of law,
right,
no one would be able to afford to pay us by the hour.
And the corporations that are generally the defendants in these cases bank on that, don't they?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about this case, but before we do that, you were assisted, your co-counsel was Steve Garner?
Really, Steve was an equal partner in Galen Richey's quest for justice against American families. Steve is a very, very close friend of mine from Springfield, Missouri, at Strong, Garner, and Bauer. And Steve is someone who is known for taking on big insurance companies. He's made quite a mark for himself. And if it weren't for Steve, Galen's case would not have been nearly as successful.
What happened in this case? Why did Galen Richey end up in a wheelchair?
The simple answer is because an insurance agent lied. Now, a little extended version of that is Galen's sister Brenda had a very large tree fall on her roof. She was a single mother of 3 children, living from paycheck to paycheck. And she called her insurance agent.
Her homeowner's insurance company.
Correct. And she said, I've had this tree fall on my roof. I need you to come and have someone take it off.
This is American Family Insurance.
That's right. Her agent said, well, how did it fall?
Does it make a difference?
It shouldn't make a difference, but her answer was, I'm not sure. It was a bright sunny day when it fell.
Yeah.
I really don't know. And she said, well, unless it fell in a storm, you have no coverage.
Yeah.
She lied.
Now, did she know she was lying at that time?
No. You know, when someone important like an agent tells you something like that, you trust them.
Right.
It's
that authority figure.
It's the authority figure, and it's also something that's just bred into us as human beings. You know, when someone in authority tells us something, generally we trust them. And so that trust lasted for a couple of days, and then she got to sort of asking some questions. She decided to call her back. And she told her a second time that she didn't have coverage unless it fell down in a storm. So the third time she called her, she said, well, you know, a week or so ago, it's been very stormy around Liberty, Missouri. So it must have been hit by lightning or weakened by wind or something.
Right.
And again, 3 times denied. She was denied coverage again. The 4th time, Brenda's mother, Dorothy, who I think you're also going to meet, who also had American Family Insurance as her homeowner, had a very large tree fall on her roof. She was a single mother of 3 children, living from paycheck to paycheck. Not Catherine Phillip Leitz, but someone in her
And
she called her insurance agent. We know about Brenda's calls. And she said, had this tree fall on my roof, I need you to come and have someone take it off.
This is American Family Insurance.
That's right. Her agent said, well, how did it fall?
Does it make a difference?
It shouldn't make a difference, but her answer was, I'm not sure. It was a bright sunny day when it fell.
Yeah.
I really don't know. And she said, well, unless it fell in a storm, you have no coverage.
Yeah.
She lied.
Now, did she know she was lying at that time?
No. You know, when someone important like an agent tells you something like that, you trust them.
Right.
It's
that authority figure.
It's the authority figure, and it's also something that's just bred into us as human beings. You know, when someone in authority tells us something, generally we trust them. And so that trust lasted for a couple of days, and then she got to sort of asking some questions. She decided to call her back. And she told her a second time that she didn't have coverage unless it fell down in a storm. So the third time she called her, she said, well, you know, a week or so ago, it's been very stormy around Liberty, Missouri. So it must have been hit by lightning or weakened by wind or something. And again, 3 times denied. She was denied coverage again.
I led with my heart. I loved Galen.
The fourth time,
from the day I
Brenda's
met him,
mother,
like a
Dorothy,
brother.
who I think you're also
And I
going to
decided
meet,
to take on
who also had American Family
American Family
Insurance
Insurance Company.
as her homeowner's insurance
we were
company.
able to create.
Called the agent, said, you know, I've had trees fall on my roof.
some
American
very,
Family's
very
always
good
removed them.
Consumer law in the state
And
of Missouri with Galen's help.
not Catherine
When you
Phillip
say
Leitz, but someone in her
is
office.
this new consumer
said,
law
we
or
know
new
about
interpretation
Brenda's
of consumer law?
call,
It is relatively
and
new.
we'll have someone get back to you.
Normally,
That call never
in
came.
Missouri, before
Never came.
Galen's case came along,
And
there
so
were only two
Brenda
very
did
narrow
what
circumstances under which
what
you could sue an
happens a
insurance
lot
company.
in the Richey family.
One
A lot
was
of
if you
people
were a
rely on
policyholder
Galen. She called her
and they
big brother,
refused to
Galen,
pay your claim. Well,
and said, can I
Galen
borrow
wasn't
your
the
chainsaw?
policyholder.
That's right.
Galen was a
said,
third
well,
party.
why do you need to
The
borrow
second
my
area
chainsaw?
of
And
law
she
is called
told him
bad
the
faith.
story about the tree on
When
the
an insurance
roof.
company refuses to
And
settle
Galen said,
a claim
I'm not going to let you
within
borrow
their
my
policy
chainsaw.
limits
I'll be over.
when they
I'll
should.
come over and help you.
Well,
So they got up on the
that's not
roof,
this kind of a
began
case either.
cutting the tree off the
so
roof,
we narrowly
and
tailored
if Catherine
our case
Phillip Leitz had
to
told
say
the
that
truth
when
and
Catherine
said, you have
Phillip
coverage, I'll
Leitz
send someone over,
told Brenda
Galen
that
would
she didn't
never have been on that
coverage,
roof.
that was a
And what happened was
negligent
he wasn't trained.
misrepresentation on her part.
And the tree
And that
shifted,
since she was an agent for
knocked
American
him off the
Family,
roof, and he fell.
American
And
Family
he's
should be
now in a
liable to
wheelchair
Galen.
for the rest
So
of
this
his
was a
life.
proximate cause
Exactly.
case,
sure did.
wasn't it?
Exactly.
And when you sued American Family, what was their
I,
defense?
again, they said that because the fall was caused by Galen making the choice to get on the roof,
Right.
that broke the causation chain, and that he was responsible for his own injuries.
Now, is there precedent in the state of Missouri to support their position?
Proximate cause goes back, way back, to the 1800s in American jurisprudence, maybe the early 1900s. There is a case that all lawyers learn about in their first year of law school called the Palsgraf case, where a woman is injured when a set of scales falls off of a train rail, hits the woman in the head, and hurts her badly. And the woman sued, I believe, a party that didn't make the scale fall. And the argument was that what that person did not cause that scale to fall, and therefore the causation was broken and there should be no liability. So that's always a question in any kind of a negligence case, the causation.
Now, the smoking gun, if you will, really focused on the agent, didn't it? Meaning this, that she classified herself, or the company classified her as an expert in knowing the policies, right?
Right.
She has to know the policies to sell them. And yet at the same time, she misadvised, wrongfully advised, lied to one of the policy holders, Brenda, Galen's sister. And therefore, because they didn't come out and take the tree off, it caused this chain of events to happen where now Galen is a paraplegic.
Right, you're right. Our best witness in the trial
Yes.
was the defendant.
We're going to go to a video deposition of that so we can see what an ornery person she is and how she answered the questions you asked her.
Okay.
Let's do that right now.
Okay.
As their agent, I try to help them, and I wish them to rely on me as their agent.
Okay. And then I use the phrase expert because that's how American Family advertises you, correct?
In 2003, that's when they started it.
Is that your understanding, that they started only referring to you as their agent, as their expert in 2003?
According to these papers right here, I've never heard it before I'd seen that, sir.
Okay. And you keep up pretty well with what the company does and how they advertise your services, I would assume.
I try to, sir, yes.
All righty. Now, do you feel as part of your job you have the obligation to know the policies and the provisions in the policies you're selling?
And object to the form of the question is vague as to what you mean by no. You can answer it.
Explain to me what you mean by no.
What
You
I
want me
mean
to
by
know
no?
every page in that policy? Is that what you're asking me? Every
No.
exclusion, everything in there? I'm not a claims adjuster.
But you're a salesperson, and you're selling a product, aren't you?
Yes, sir, I am.
And the product you're selling is an insurance policy, isn't it?
Yes, sir, I am.
And as part of the sale of that product, do you feel that you should know the product you're selling?
I'm not going to answer that question.
As we can see, that she wasn't too receptive to the questions that you had, but let's talk a little bit about her responsibility here.
Our whole platform for Galen's case was that if American Family is holding their agents out as the expert and they are selling a product for American Family called an insurance policy, they ought to know the provisions of those insurance policies inside and out. And repeatedly, over and over again, she fought that in her deposition. She fought that at trial. And as it turned out, the jury just simply didn't think that she was credible.
And thank God, because with us today, we're not only going to have Galen come on in a minute, but we also have Galen's mother and his sister. So let's bring on Galen right now. It's my great pleasure to introduce Galen Richey. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about that day when you fell off the roof. Your sister called you over because the insurance company wouldn't remove this tree. It was a big tree. It was, what, 1,400 pounds?
Yeah, it was quite a bit bigger than what I expected when I got there, to
Okay.
be honest. My main concern was my nephews at the time were pretty young. The tree went right across the front porch of the house and down the peak of the roof. And my nephews were constantly playing it in and out and under it. And Brenda called me and asked me if I'd come over and, well, she first called and asked if she could borrow my chainsaw. She was going to try to cut it down herself.
Yeah.
And knowing my sister, I knew that was kind of her way of getting me over there to help her cut the
Okay.
tree down. So I told her, no, I'll get the saw and I'll come over. And it was the 8th of August in 2000. And it was hot that day, I remember that. And I went over and kind of looked at it for a while, kind of set up a game plan on how I was going to cut it down. And we got up on the roof and I started cutting all the brush away from it so I could get up closer to it. And then I was going to just section it off in smaller pieces and throw it down off the roof. So I'd got all the brush cut away from it and shut the saw off at that time, and we were over at the corner of the house throwing brush off the side of the house down into the driveway. And I figured I could cut it up on the ground at that point. And you know, I don't remember a whole lot after that. I remember Brenda yelling and her screaming, and when she screamed, I turned around just in time that the tree caught me right in the chest and took me off the side of the house. I remember bits and pieces of it. I knew enough to know to get away from the limb on the way down, so I shoved myself back away from it on the way down. And it messed me, luckily, but I landed beside the driveway. I landed on my rear end, and your back just keeps going down, so it blew my L1 vertebrae just into pieces, what they call a burst fracture. I remember laying on the ground and yelling at my sister to call 911. And I knew at that time I couldn't move my legs or anything, and you know, just the pain. But
Terrific pain.
yeah, pretty much unbelievable. But you know, the pain I wasn't so much worried about was not being able to move. You know, I knew you hear enough and you know enough about spinal cord injuries to know, you know, that I was in big trouble at that point. I think your automatic reaction from the pain is you try to get up off the ground.
Right.
So my sister had the phone in her hand. I remember her trying to hold me down because I was trying to get up. And it didn't seem like too long a time. You know, I told her to call Marie, which is my wife. I said, you need to call Marie. and the ambulance was on its way at that time. You could hear it coming up the road.
How soon after that did the doctors tell you that you would be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life?
You know, I knew it was bad just by listening to the doctors and everything coming in. I know when they took me down to St. Luke's, they took me into surgery quite a while, or right away, and they didn't really tell me anything until I got out of surgery. Prepare you for the worst. You know, they told me at that time that, yeah, you probably won't walk again. You know, there's a good chance that you won't walk again, things like that.
Right.
They say as a general rule, what you get back in the first few years is probably going to be it. And that's about the way it worked out. I got a little bit back and a little bit of feeling back. You know, every month I might be able to move something a little bit more.
Yeah. And you're still a diesel mechanic, right? You work on cars, right? Trucks?
I work on cars for the Cars Ministry. I mean,
How did you meet up with Brian here?
I had actually, my wife and I went to several attorneys on our case when we got hurt. And it started out to the point where we just wanted, to be honest, American Family take care of some of our medical bills.
Yeah.
And it started out to the point of my sister had a $100,000 liability policy.
Did they deny that too?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't an insured. He wasn't the policyholder.
They couldn't point to any negligence that Brenda had. The liability portion of that homeowner's policy was to protect Brenda from negligence.
Right.
And they said that there wasn't anything Brenda did that was negligent, so we're not going to pay you anything.
They're just true to form, weren't they?
They acted exactly as I expected.
Yeah.
We started out with we had a little house. It's about 850 square feet. And we raised our kids in there. And I figured if we could get the $100,000 out of liability, at least I could pay my house off and set it up a little bit handicap accessible, and and we'd make it. And they said, no, we're not responsible for it. Like Brian said, their exact question to me when I first called them and asked them was, well, your sister didn't push you off the roof, did she? And,
Smart asses.
And
That was their first question.
yeah.
Was this the same agent?
No.
Oh.
No.
This was a claims adjuster.
And I told them, I said, well, my sister would have pushed me off. I said, she went to jail for that. I said, they said, well, we're not responsible for the liability end of it. And I said, well, I guess I'll just have to get an attorney and see what I can do.
Fortunately, you brought your wife here today. We'd like to bring her on. It's my great pleasure to introduce Marie Richey. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Take us back to that day when you first heard that Galen had been injured severely, by falling off the roof. What were your initial thoughts?
It was, oh my God, what happened? Because he was up on the roof with the chainsaw.
Yeah.
And so I had these other thoughts in my head that maybe a limb or something like that. But instead the branch had catapulted him off the roof and he landed on his bottom and it burst fractured his L1. And they told me or Brenda had called me just hysterical, his little sister, and then she let me know that he had gotten hurt. And so I told her I'll be right over there. And I went over there and they were putting him in the ambulance, and Galen says, it's really, really bad. I'm really messed up.
How has life been since, when did this happen? 2000, right? 10 years ago.
August 8th.
How has life been over the last 10 years?
It was a real struggle.
Yeah.
And it was hard to adjust all of it. And he had, he wasn't a journeyman anymore. And then I had to go back into work because I was at home, a stay-at-home mother. And so I went back and worked fast food and tried to make ends meet between that and, Social Security income. And we had 2 teenage children at the time, and it was tough.
Now, you ended up suing American Family Insurance.
Yes.
I want to ask you 2 questions. First of all, what do you think of the McAllister law firm?
They're great people. They really are.
Well, they took the case whenever nobody else would, right?
Right. We went to several lawyers.
Yeah.
And they were the only ones that would even talk to us, really.
Yeah.
And they called us back and said that we're going to go ahead and take the case.
And then the second question is, what do you think about American Family Insurance Company? Go ahead, you can say whatever you want on camera.
Well, I think he got a rotten deal. I do,
Yeah.
you know, and they just tried to give us the minimal amount of, you know,
Yeah.
like $1,000, and then basically so that we wouldn't try to go back on, you know, and get more or whatever. And
So they wanted you to, they're going to give you a little cash, sign away all your rights. Is that what they
Right.
wanted to do? Well, that's real sweet of them.
yes, so
How has this accident changed both of you?
100% from where your life was before. You know, I was an outdoor person. I like camping, and we used to go camping all the time and hiking, and just one of our favorite hobbies was dancing, and we used to go out dancing.
all those things that I took for granted for those 15 years before he got hurt, you know,
Yeah. Well,
he used to do for me, and then
well, it's because of the love that both of you have for each other that you were able to weather this, and you know, my hats off to both of you.
Well, I think a lot of it too is, you know, things that I can do now, I pick up and do. And there's a lot of things, you know, I do as much as I can around the house. And I told myself in the beginning that I wasn't going to sit around and feel sorry for myself.
Yeah.
And I don't. You know, I could dwell on the negatives, or I made a conscious decision in the beginning that I was going to make something positive come out of it.
Good.
I think now I enjoy everything around me more, you know, just nature itself, you know, being alive.
Well, you're an inspiration to everybody runs into such, you know, catastrophic changes in their life. I want to thank you both for coming on the program, and my hat's off to you. I'm very pleased to have with us Galen's mom, Dorothy, and his sister, Brenda. Welcome to the show. I understand, Dorothy, that you had a crucial piece of evidence in this whole case, and that was your Hallmark calendar, right?
Yes.
And this Hallmark calendar you have kept for how many years?
I have since I started them way back in the 70s, I think, when I started
And what do
working.
you write in this calendar? Hold it up for a second.
Everything that happens every day.
You do. So, for
Usually.
example, today, what would you write today? That you came over here?
I came
and-
over here.
Yeah, you write everything. And how many years?
Most
You've
of the time
got
I do.
30 or 40 years of these calendars?
I've got a lot of them. I have some way back that I've probably thrown away after so long, and if I got one that's got some important things in it
Yeah.
that I think I need to keep, I keep.
Why was your calendar so important in this case?
Because it actually showed who I called and when this person.
So in other
Yeah,
words, the
everything
American
else.
Family Insurance people said that Brenda had only called once, right? When in actuality, she had called, what, 3 times?
3
You
times.
called 3 times?
And then I called too.
Because you had American Family Insurance, didn't you? And you had trees or friends that had trees removed from the roof, right?
We did it at our own place.
Yeah. So when you initially called them that day, were you kind of surprised by the agent's initial answer?
Well, yes.
Yeah? Did you go look at your policy or anything?
No, I just trusted her word for it. I thought she had my best interest in mind. So.
Yeah. Now this is, you had 2 kids at the time, correct?
Yes.
And this is a
Well, I have 3.
3, but
kids.
1,400-pound tree limb on your roof
Yes.
is kind of disconcerting, right? Kind of worried about that, right? When they didn't answer, you called your brother.
I called my mom first to tell her about it, and then
Yeah.
eventually it was 3 weeks before I finally asked my brother if I could borrow his chainsaw. But
Were you planning on going up there and cutting it yourself?
yes.
Because your brother said that wasn't true.
Well, I
Your
was.
brother said that was your way of having him and the chainsaw come over. Is that right? Come on, tell the truth.
Well, I was just. I'm a determined person. I thought maybe I can do this. I didn't know what I was doing, but
Yeah. So let me ask you something. You both of you have weathered this experience along with Galen. What has been the biggest challenge, would you say, for both of you? Seeing Galen and seeing him recover pretty well, you know, as best as he possibly can. What's been the biggest challenge to you, Dorothy?
Well, he's got a lot of courage, and you know, I knew he would make the best of his ability, but I will never, ever see him normal again.
Yes. What's been the biggest challenge for you, Brenda?
Probably the same thing. And just that earlier that day, we were talking about our lives and how our lives were, we felt like our lives were both starting to look up, you know. We'd had hard times and things were getting better.
Right.
And I was going through a divorce, and I thought, well, maybe
Maybe this tree was a good thing.
Yeah, and we were sitting and laughing, and to remember that with him walking and us having a good time that when it started, and then for it to all end like that.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being on the program. Thanks for taking the time today to come over and see us.
All right.
Brian, I got to tell you, your clients, I love them, and they love you. And that cements lasting relationships with you and all the clients that you go to bat for, doesn't it?
It does. It's what I look for in every case, is to build a life relationship with the clients, because I feel like in these kinds of cases like Galen's, I take away so much more from the case than I actually give. From Galen, I learned how to be a better husband. I learned how to be a better father. I learned how to be a better Christian, because he has tremendous faith. He's kind of shy. I don't know if you noticed that, but he has more faith in his little finger than I do in my entire body. And so I learn those things, and I take those things away, hopefully for the rest of my life.
Part of being a great lawyer is the fact that you take cases and you are willing to take cases to trial. There's a lot of lawyers who look for quick settlements, regardless of whether it's in the best interest of their clients or not. It requires a lot of financial firepower and determination to win a just case for one of your clients. What is it that separates you from those other lawyers? Why do you do what you do?
When you sign on with a client and you promise them that you will do everything you can to make sure they are treated fairly, I think that you sign up for the long haul. You are making a bond with your client in that promise. And unless you're willing to arm yourself for battle in the courtroom, you're cheating your client. So in my mind, going to trial is part of the deal. It's part of the bargain that you've struck with your client, if necessary. And you're right, unfortunately. There are lawyers who enter a case thinking, I've got great damages, I've got a very injured client, I can settle this case. And fortunately, I think those lawyers are the exception to the rule. But I will say this. I think that today, because of the way the economy is, because of the pressures that we as trial lawyers have in making sure that our clients maintain their right to a jury trial, the trial lawyer is a dying breed. It's very unusual to find lawyers who are willing to go into the courtroom these days, and it's sad, really, because I can't think of a higher calling other than maybe being a preacher that you can have in life than being a trial lawyer.
Well, thank God Galen found you, and thank God there's lawyers like you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
It's been our pleasure to have you on our show.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. You can get more information about this show and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.